Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, MichaelRearden.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but there's been times when I wish things wouldn't end. Perhaps it could have been a time in school, it could have been a career, some type of job, maybe a relationship, or maybe even all the way to thinking about life. I think about the aspect of what is permanent and what is not permanent because many people they want good things in their life that are like permanent, right? So if I'm looking for a wonderful thing and I finally get it, I want this good thing to last. That means the good times, the abundance, the prosperity, maybe the butterflies, the love, right? But everything is not perfect all the time. Sometimes we need that bad. Sometimes we need to understand that there's going to be new beginnings. So today I have a TOS series, part 66. We're making our way up there, and we're going to be talking about the dual nature of permanence. Now, quickly defining permanence, it is the state or quality of lasting or remaining unchanged indefinitely. Now, if you know anything about just being indefinite, right, it's just not going to end. If we want something in our life that's indefinite, it's going to be hard to find that because everything in our life is changing. There are some things that we can't change. For example, a death. We can't change that someone has passed away. It's given to everyone. And that's a topic that we're going to be talking about in next week or the week after about how life and death are just kind of always with us. And it's going to be a wonderful episode, so you don't want to miss that one. When we get into the aspect of permanence, is very similar to how we just want things how we want them. We buy a new car, we want the car to remain pristine, we want our house to remain pristine, but there's an aspect to that we have to continually put in work and progress to make sure things remain like that. So if you want a wonderful home, great, you can have it. But if you want it to be perfect, you better be making sure you do the work every single day. That means if you have this wonderful house, you're cleaning the house, you are fixing things that are broken, you are going to enjoy that you are there. Most people, they get something and eventually it becomes something. A phone, for example. You love it. You're so careful with it on the first day. And then all of a sudden, I dropped it. Who cares, right? I'll get another one. All right. You just don't necessarily care as much as you did on the first day. It's the shiny effect. So we like new things and then we get accustomed to those things. It happens in all aspects of our life, especially relationships. So you have a new relationship, it's so wonderful. But then somewhere down the road, you're like, well, you know what? I'm already bored of this relationship. I'm used to this relationship. I want something new. I want something spicy. I want something that's going to make me happy when the reality was happiness was always derived by you. That means you were in charge of your good and bad times. Now, I understand someone can influence some level of factor onto your mindset, but that doesn't mean that they have full say in what you're going to think long term. Because if someone gives you a negativity, it is your choice to hold on to it or to let it go. And most people, they hold on to those negativities. They ruminate with them and they look at how they can get even or that they can feel better in some way and somehow. They don't want to feel like that. They don't want that feeling to be permanent. But in life, there's always going to be new beginnings, right? Whether it be, like I said, a relationship, maybe a new neighborhood you're moving, so that changes your whole lifestyle. And it could be something as big as a job loss. And I know there's many companies right now, they're struggling with paying the bill for their people. Maybe they're not making enough money because, again, what happens in the world of economics and society is if I am worried about money coming in, I'm going to be real cautious about money going out. So, all the big companies, the tech giants, Apple, Google, all of these companies are having layoffs, even Tesla. where you have to ask yourself, where is the certainty, right? Because many people are trying to figure out, well, what is certain with my career, with my job? Well, your job is not certain. Doesn't matter if you are a 9 to 5 worker or you are an entrepreneur, because either or you can have a success or failure. And what's the statistic? 5 years, 50% of new businesses fail because what? Profit, because of lack of passion, perhaps. But then again, passion and profit are two totally different things. You can do something because you love it, but if it's not profitable to you, what is truly the reason that's keeping you there? Because you might love helping people, you might love servicing your community, but then at the same time, if you hate going into your job every day, it's only a matter of time before you say, you know what, I'm going to close the door. And then you have to even think about generational gaps. Because let's say you are a father or mother, you start a wonderful business, and then you want to keep that in the family. So you want to pass this on to your children, and they have no inkling to do what mom or dad did. Now I understand there is going to be some children that do that, but the majority of people, they want to go out and live their own life. They want to go do their own thing. So the business that you have created for the family, for everyone around you per se, is going to be up for grabs or it's going to be left to die. The business, you want it to be something that lasts forever, right? You want it to be permanent. But in a sense, things are not going to be permanent. And today we're going to be focusing on careers, especially right now. Like I said, there's so much uncertainty when it comes to jobs. Many people are losing their jobs. Many people are living month to month thinking like, am I going to lose my job? And rightfully so. You should be worried about an income, because if you don't have an income, then how are you going to provide for yourself? How are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to keep a roof over your head? How are you going to keep your belly full? One of the fears I believe many people are holding on to is the fear of not being able to sustain the lifestyle that they have today. So that means if you're living in a luxury home, in a house, and you have all of these fast cars, a fear of yours is to lose it. Now, it might not be something you think about every day. You're not going to wake up in the morning and say, whoa, I'm afraid to lose my house. I'm afraid to lose my car. But when you don't have as much money and you are more focused on the money right now, you are going to worry about it a lot more than someone else who has an abundance right now. Because, yes, if you think of it as like a water level, the water level is going down, 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 down. When you get halfway, you might say, whoa, I'm getting close to half, but halfway might be millions of dollars. For us, halfway might be $100 in our bank account. So depending on where you are, this article right here, TOS Part 66, A Dual Nature of Permanence, is going to give you a different type of mindset. If you are familiar with the articles and the blogs, TUSs are for people who have a very strong mindset already. Now, we talk about different levels of impact when it comes to permanence. We talk about financial strain, we talk about the identity crisis, and we talk about emotional turmoil. And I hinted at all of these previously, but financial strain is going to be the biggest one. Because if you're worried about money, you're not going to be spending money. Your wants, your needs are going to change drastically. However, many people will still retain some of those habits that are making them poor, whether it be poor physically, like you don't have money to pay for things, or you have a very poor mindset where you are not financially literate in doing the things that are going to bring about more money into your life. Now, I understand getting money is difficult for people who don't know how to make it properly. Now, there's many ways you can make money. You can get a 9 to 5 job. Of course, now you're trading time for money, and that's going to be the most laborious and most difficult things that you can do with that, unless you're charging an exuberant amount because of your skill level, etc. If you are a person who is an entrepreneur, I was listening to a radio show. The lady was worried about paying her salary for her workers, and she had a couple of workers. I think it was like 3 or 4. their salary was $50,000 around there. And the profit for the company was about 40, 42, 45, something around there. So that means her workers were making more than what she was. Now, of course, the company is profitable, but the issue is that something that she wants to do long term now? Because she can say, I'm going to close up shop because I'm only making $42,000 a year, and I can go work at McDonald's and be a manager and make $110,000 a year. So you're doing it for love or you're doing it for money, right? So sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, is this good or is this bad? And I think of Will Jocko. He's a leadership ex Navy SEAL or former Navy SEAL, and he talks about the idea of good and bad. So if something good happens, he goes good. If something bad happens, he goes good. It's the same type of mindset. It's like no matter what, we're going to keep on pushing. So if we make a profit, good. If we don't make a profit, good. Okay, let's start to look at what needs to be changed. And when it comes to individuals and that change, it's like, well, I don't want to change. I want things to be permanent. They want good, they want abundance. But we do have to understand things have to change. And you might have been doing things one way for a very long time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the best way all the time. For example, we could look at Kodak. When Kodak was one of the leading people in, the single-use cameras, I'm not sure if anyone knows them. I mean, you could still go to Walmart, maybe Walgreens, CVS, things like that to purchase a single-use camera. But those things are almost obsolete now. There was times when they said it's better to use a single-use camera if you have a car accident, but now people just kind of don't even care about that because they have accepted the norm of just use your phone, right? Just use your phone, snap a couple of pictures, and I know things can be digitally altered, but if both people are taking pictures of the accident, you don't have to necessarily worry about that. But that's a side note. So we have Kodak, who didn't necessarily want to enter the digital age. So guess what? They got left behind. So Canyon took over, Nikon took over, and then basically they kind of just, slowly kind of died off. And it happens to companies that are not staying up and relevant with the times. They wanted to keep this permanent figure of what they wanted to do, but their mission had to change. Because if the world is changing for photography, essentially you have to change. Very similar to this business, right? Coaching. If I understand that maybe in like 20 years, coaching changes, it's no longer going to be done online or maybe even in person, right? Maybe everything is going to be courses. So I'm going to have to say, well, the times are everyone wants courses. So I'll probably make some courses. Of course, I'll still do the in-persons and I'll still do the remotes. But if the world is saying, hey, this is where we need to move, in a sense, you want to help people acclimate to that because having someone do something that is necessarily not for them, they're going to have a very hard time accepting that. So that causes, in a whole span of things, a lot of issues with the mind. Number one is going to be identity, and then number two is going to be emotions because you have so many things to worry about. You're like, oh, I'm worried about my finances, right? Because we already talked about that. You don't know how to make ends meet. You might say, well, if I have to get a new job, it has to make as much money as I was making because I don't want to downgrade my lifestyle. Well, guess what? Your identity is that. Your identity is saying, I am this person, I am this status, I am this middle class, I am this upper class person, and I cannot downgrade, right? Because that will be a slap in the face. That will belittle me. So your identity is actually stopping you from probably living true to your finances or your financial goals. Because if you want to one day own a wonderful home, to go on all of these lavish vacations, change your identity. And you're going to start to see that your financial way is going to fix a lot sooner. Because right now you're living in a false identity, most likely, and it's causing strain on your life. Now we get into the emotional aspect, right? I cannot drive a Nissan Altima. Like, who will look at me and say, you're driving a Nissan Altima and be so upset? No, no one. right? Of course, you might go to a country club that's too expensive for you, and you might say, oh my goodness, they're driving a Nissan Altima and I'm driving this Jaguar or this Ferrari or something. But let me tell you something about those rich people that go to the country clubs. They do not care about the car. Now, they might have a car because they like it, but they're not looking at other people's cars and saying, oh, they're driving that car, they're driving that car. Now, understand there's going to be a very small amount of people that do that. And there's going to be certain cars that they typically go toward. So they might get those Land Rovers, they might get the Cadillacs, they might get the Lincolns and things like that. Of course, those are fine cars, but you have to ask yourself, what do you want your car to do for you? And for me, I just like my car to get me to A to B and to be reliable. I don't need all the fancy emblems and I don't need the status of my car because while I'm driving, I'm just driving. I don't necessarily am worried about, oh, am I driving in this nice fancy car and I want everyone to understand what I'm doing and, oh, look, they got a nice car. I mean, most times I'm driving, I'm just kind of paying attention to the road, not about what other people are driving. Now, of course, if you're going to have a very loud car and you're going not the speed limit, I'm going to say, whoa, this person got some issues. But hey, that's neither here or there. We're looking at the three areas that we need to be focusing on if we're trying to look at permanence in a way that's a good thing rather than a bad thing. Now we're getting into the opportunities for us to grow because we talked about all the bad things, and the bad things are important, right? Because we need to be aware of what is happening in our life that we need to change, or we don't know what's going to be, necessary to change. For example, people typically don't come for coaching if they think everything's good, right? They don't say, Michael, everything's good in my life. I had a happy relationship. I got a very good career. My kids love me. You know, I don't even know why I'm here, but I just want to kind of check in, right? People don't do that. People have a problem. People say, my career is messed up. My life is messed up. I want a relationship. I don't want this relationship. They can talk about all the different things that they're not happy with, that they're unhappy with, that they want to change. It's not so much of, I don't need help, right? I don't need help. I'm just making sure. Most people, they come, they need some type of help. So you might ask yourself, why in the world would someone come to you if they don't need help? Well, let me ask you this. Do you go to the doctor every year, right, for a checkup? You should. Do you go to the dentist every 6 months? You should, right? You might not have a cavity. You might not have a heart problem or something like that. You might not have any pain anywhere in your body, but you still do the work to check in. Why do we check in? Because we have to understand that as we are growing up, things change. Our body's naturally going to change, right? Who you were when you were 16 is very different than who you are at 30. That's going to be a learning lesson for many individuals because we think that we're just, this permanent being, right? Because we always think about life. We think about always being here, not so much about always not being here. That's why many people don't have retirement funds because they're always thinking about being here, right? I'm worried about being here. In a sense, the mindset of that is a positive thing, but financially is a risky thing. So we look at the blessings for what happens when we can get a new beginning, right? The good stuff now. We are going to be able to develop our skills. We are going to be able to start new businesses, perhaps, or start new careers. And then it also leads to better personal growth. What is personal growth? Personal growth is meaning that who you are today is going to be an insignificant person tomorrow. That means you can look back at your previous self and you can say, whoa, I have changed so much. Now, that change typically doesn't happen in one day. It typically takes some time. You're going to have to give yourself a week, maybe a month, maybe a year, maybe even longer than that. Depends on your resources too. Because if you don't have the resources to get a mentor, get a guide, a coach, or someone, you're going to have a much more difficult time doing the trial and error. So we're trying to evolve ourselves because the only person that you should be in competition with is yourself, essentially, the day before. So that means the person you were yesterday, How can I be better than that version? Maybe I do one sit up today, right? Maybe you did zero yesterday. Maybe you're looking for a job, right? You're looking for finance blessings, right? Let's figure out how you can make more money. If it is maybe making some calls, maybe it's doing some ads or something, right? Try something different. There's many ways and many things that you can do. And sometimes you could do things very quickly, and sometimes things are very systematic and they're going to take some time. The issue when you have a business, I have found, is you can't do everything yourself. Number one, you might not have the skill for it. And number two, you definitely don't have the time for it. So in a sense, you rely on people to help you out and to do the things that are things that maybe you don't want to do, things you don't have the time to do, or the things you don't have the skill to do. So now you're almost at the liberty of, these individuals. And if they do a good job or if they don't do a good job, that's going to be something that you have to learn from experience. And it's so funny because I hear stories from like people who work in politics or they work in these big companies and they hire someone who might have a good track record of working for other Fortune 500 companies or working for other offices. And you hear about all these mistakes that this person is making, their attitude and things like that. And it's almost like they don't even appreciate the job that they have and they might be making very good money. So it's not so much always about the income that you're going to be attaining from a job. Because if you don't like the people that you're working with, or if you don't like the end goal of your job, for example, let's say you're in IT, right? Your job might not bring any meaning to you, right? You just fix someone's computers, and if you give yourself this idea of helping people grow and fixing, people's computers and that helps them be happy, sure, right? That's maybe more for like a fix it type shop. But if you're just like an IT for a big company, it's almost like people only come to you when they have problems, not so much of when they don't have problems. Like, hey, how are you doing? Like, hey, I have a problem. I need you to fix it. So that can be something that people have a hard time with, and they typically struggle with that. Uh, I've seen it happen too often, but when it comes to different levels, it just depends on your career and your role. You have to understand that the job that you have is never going to be permanent. All right. The only job I think is permanent is a parent, right? Like, and then parent meaning everything that comes with a parent. So you're a parent, you are a grandparent. But even that, like some grandparents are like, I don't want to be with, my grandkids or whatever. They want to go travel the world. So depending on the person, job can be permanent or not. Because I even know some parents that are not like permanent, right? They're like, well, I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing. I'm gonna go leave the kid with grandma or grandpa or my brother or my sister or someone else, right? I want someone else to take care of this problem, essentially, right? Because they are stopping me from living my life. Okay, great. Whatever it is, accept what it is. You might be that kid, and you have to accept that you have a parent that is not your ideal person, right? This happened quite a bit with millennials. Their parents would just kind of go out, do whatever you want. And one of the things millennials was missing was that, they wanted their parents to say, I love you, I care for you. But then again, once that started to happen, where now these millennials are saying, I'm loving you and I'm caring for you, they're not allowing their kids to go out and explore the world and to jump off trees and things like that because they love them so much. And I'm not saying that your grandparents or your parents didn't love you. It's just a different way of raising. And so now there's a different dynamic to the mindset. So we do have to accept how parenting styles are even changing. There's nothing permanent. So there is going to be some things we're going to be focusing on: perspective shift, support systems, and then, of course, we need to be looking at the action plan for all of this to happen. Because there's so many factors to permanence, right? Permanence is, again, being the idea of things being permanent. When you're trying to hold on to something that shouldn't be held on to, essentially you're hurting yourself in the long run. You can definitely give yourself this idea of, well, this is a learning lesson for me. This is a life lesson for me. But most people, they're going to kind of keep on doing the things that are not beneficial to them or for them. One of the things I see too frequently are people who do bad things, and I'm just going to call them criminals. And they're not necessarily criminals, right? But by law, they are criminals, right? They're felons. They stole something. They did a DUI or something, right? They're people who are making mistakes, right? For some reason, when an individual makes a mistake like that, they do a DUI, they do a robbery or something, whatever it be, they remain consistent in that action. So they don't only get one DUI, they get another one. They don't get one felony charge for assault, they get two, right? So it's like, did you not learn your lesson the first time? Now, there is going to be, or there are going to be people that learn, right? I'm learning from my lesson, but there's a good amount of people who don't, right? Should we belittle the people who don't? Should we say that you're not a good member of society because you keep making the same mistakes? Well, we all continually make big mistakes in our life. Every single day we wake up and maybe we hit the snooze button. That's a mistake, right? Maybe you wake up and you do the same thing you did yesterday and you're hoping for more in your life. You can't keep doing the same things and expect something better to happen for you. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So if you're going into a 9 to 5 job, for example, and every single day you make the same amount, but you're dreaming of living a more lavish lifestyle, and maybe your income is at a point where you're saving more than you're spending. Maybe one day you can finally reach it. But then at that point, is that new beginning something that is going to make you more happy? You do have to understand the job losses that are happening, the new beginnings that are taking place, they can be a good thing. But oftentimes people are like, wait 1 second. I have no idea what is happening and I don't like this. I'm so worried about losing my job versus me losing my job as an opportunity to find something better. So, permanence is not so much about holding on to things and hoping things never change. It's allowing them to become, something that's in your life for a moment. And then if they don't need to be in your life or if they fall out from your life, it is okay to let them go. Just talking about the Will Jocko thing once more. He understands that some things are going to happen in his life that are going to be good and some things are not going to be good. They're going to be bad, essentially. So he just gives himself the mindset of good. Because if this is not something that I got, that I wanted, something else that's coming next is going to be better. So if you lose your job, of course, you can reach out to us. You can look for some career help, some leadership help. The big thing is to look at that job loss as an opportunity to get something better. Now, I understand you might have worked for a wonderful family, you might have worked for a wonderful company, and it might seem like there is no one else out there, right? No one else can be as good as that person or this company. Well, if you believe that, why not start a company that good where you can be that boss and you have employees that think about that to the company? You're going to give yourself a new mission, a new perspective on things. And then you're going to start to try to hold on to that permanence. Again, I want this company to last forever. But yet, in our economic struggles and times today, more companies are closing that have been around 10, 15, 20 years. And you have to ask yourself, what makes your company any different? Of course, you can give yourself this aspiration that you're going to last and stand forever. But the reality is, are you keeping up with the times? Are you using these new opportunities, these failures that come your way as stepping stones for you to make some changes? So remember, like I said, nothing essentially is permanent. Now, death is permanent, but when it comes to our life and our working days, nothing is going to necessarily be permanent. So, looking at TUS Part 60, the dual nature of permanence, navigating life's unpredictable turns, we talk about so many different topics here, especially with job loss, where you might be trying to figure out, how am I going to overcome this? And all of this is going to be something that you can insert something else. And I gave so many different examples today. You might talk about job loss today. You might think about relationship loss. You might think of a loss of a loved one. It doesn't necessarily matter. You just insert what you need to insert in there that you felt that you lost, because there's always going to be a new beginning. There's going to be another day for you to say, okay, if I want the blessings to come my way, if I want good in my life, this is what I have to do next. If you don't have another day, you're not going to be worrying about anything. So it's something that you don't have to worry about. But for the people that are alive, the people that are ready, the people who are afraid to take action, or maybe even afraid for change, understand that change can be maybe the best thing that happens to you in your life. So don't run away from it, embrace it.